We are the One Story Podcast. We believe in the power of a story. Everyone has a story, and that story is meaningful. Your story can make a difference. Your story can inspire others. Your story is important. At the same time, ultimately, everyone's story is a part of one story, the big God story.
It's not what you said. You're not who you said you were. When are you alone? When will you come back home?
This is the One Story Podcast, coming to you live. My name is Drew, and I'm with Isaac. Thank you for listening. Thank you for giving us the time into your lives, whatever you're doing right now. We really do appreciate it and love that this is something that people are listening to. And we hope that you guys are sharing it with people, with friends, family, whatever the case may be. This is episode 35. We have Haley McGrattan on the show, or McGrattan. She goes to church with Isaac here at Southlands Chino, and it's a really good story of. It's hard to, well, you'll hear it. It's pretty deep. Something that's not wrapped in a fancy bow at the end of it, which is real. So you kind of hear that in Haley's story, where she's in process, like we all are, and doesn't have it all figured out. Which I think everybody or people would be lying if they said they did have it all figured out. But we can still follow Jesus wholeheartedly and be committed and still not have it all together. So here's the show with Haley McGrattan. We hope you enjoy. Okay, so we're here with Haley McGrattan.
Yeah.
Hello.
Hello.
How are you doing today?
That's not the way you pronounce her name.
McGrattan.
There you go. That's
Haley
good.
McGrattan.
Yep, that's good.
From the Irish countryside. You are a self-proclaimed outdoor enthusiast?
Yes.
How does that play out?
How do you know that and I don't?
Well, you don't do your research on our guests?
He Instagram stalked.
No, you did the Wikipedia?
Yeah.
You haven't seen your Wikipedia page?
What's the draw of the outdoors?
I guess that's just where I really see God's hand in the world.
Nice. What are some favorite places you've been that you've enjoyed the outdoors?
Montana. Oh my gosh.
And you just went there, right?
Yes.
Where'd you go?
My mom just got a house in Libby.
Oh.
So it's literally like right next to the Canadian border. It's like
up north, huh?
gorgeous, amazing.
Dang.
Yeah, it's
How hard was it coming back?
I was like, man,
how do I make this happen? No, for sure.
no. But there's parts of California
There's
that are
beauty
beautiful
in a
too.
lot of different.
So
We lived in my wife and I, and we had my son out there in Salt Lake City, and it's beautiful there with the mountains and everything's
Yeah.
right there. And we actually went up to Montana. I had to go for work a couple times, and then we went to a wedding in Bozeman, and just the
okay.
drive from Salt Lake, you go through Wyoming. We went the west side of Yellowstone. You kind of cut through there, and then we went up to Montana, and then across. It's beautiful up there.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
I've been to Fullerton once.
The Fullerton Loop, the trails.
I did the Orange Loop. So Haley is, we go to church together. That's how I know
Yes.
you. You are the administrator here?
Yeah. So I'm one of the administrators
Okay.
of Southlands.
You do a great job. My wife describes you as the church mascot.
Oh,
She
yes.
says you're kind of the face of the church. So, yeah, a lot of
Nice.
just no pressure, but just know that's what. So it's the way we see you.
Okay. Thanks for that, Isaac.
But I will
Making me
say,
nervous.
what
Are you
was
nervous?
funny.
Yes.
Okay,
That's good.
Being nervous
I'm
is
a
good.
very quiet person, so this is like totally
Well, thank-
out of my comfort zone.
Perfect.
Well,
Thank you for
I'm,
doing
like,
this.
shaking.
That's awesome.
No, and this is your fault though.
Yeah, it is my fault. I take full responsibility.
No, because so what happened was, which is kind of like God kind of moving, kind of wanting you to be here because it was last week.
Yeah,
you
on
hit me
Sunday,
up and you
yeah.
go like, well, if you ever need a guest, if you don't have a guest
In a pinch or something.
yeah, and you're desperate for somebody, I'll do the show. And I was like,
2
okay.
days later.
And then I told you, I'm like, no, we want to hear your story.
Yeah.
It doesn't have
Yeah,
to be.
we had talked about that anyways.
Before
Yeah.
we called you, I was like, oh, Haley wants to come on. So we had
We'll schedule
we
her
had this
in
day
into the future.
scheduled out, and then we got someone that dropped out, and so I call. Yeah, a couple days later, I call you. I'm like, you're not gonna even believe this. So this is, this is you're doing.
Yeah.
So you're here.
You reap what you sow. No, I'm kidding. I'm nervous, but I'm excited. So
Good.
Yeah.
So where does your story begin?
Well, so, gosh, how do I
You
start?
wish you had those notes now, right?
Yeah.
You
Where'd you grow
in
up?
Chino, right?
I grew up in Chino. I was born in Chino Hospital right here.
Oh, wow.
Hey,
Yeah.
now.
So I've kind of been here my whole life. I was here at Park before it was Southlands.
And we had talked about that a little bit with Fernando on the Tribe episode.
Where he
about
came in and
from Park to South End.
it's like the youth that the
Right,
youth that was here
right.
at Park, and so people don't know the church that we're recording at today is Southlands Chino, but it used to be Park. What was it? Park
Park
Church?
Christian
Park
Fellowship.
Okay, so there was like kind of a merger,
Right.
So now we're one big family, and you were part of the old church.
Right. So I grew up there. My whole family went to the church. But I do have a big family. I'm one of 8 kids right now.
What? Oh, wow.
Yeah. But at the time, it was just one of 5.
So you really are Irish.
I am, totally. Full blood. No, I'm kidding. Yeah, so I grew up in the church, and then my parents got a divorce, so then we stopped going.
You guys stopped going to church because of the divorce?
Yeah, just because, like, my mom and dad felt like people were going to, like, pick sides, or, like, my dad thought, oh, people will think bad things of me because of what your mom's saying, or my mom was like, people
So
will think bad things about me because
The
of what your
divorce
dad is
was
saying.
ugly, sounds like.
It was really ugly. It took 4.5 years to finalize the divorce.
Wow.
It was, like, a nasty
Was it like
divorce.
custody stuff and...
Custody things, like,
How old were you at this time?
I was, like, 11 or 12,
So
something like that.
Oh, you're in the
you
midst of it.
Witnessed
Yeah,
it and
yeah.
experienced it.
And, like, out of all my siblings, I'm, like, the, like, emotional one. And so, like, we had 50-50 custody. So, like, I would spend, like, 3 days at my dad's house and 4 days at my mom's. And it was just an emotional roller coaster because, like, when I was at my dad's house, like, my dad would tell me things, like, to get me to hate my mom. And then when I would go to my mom's house, my mom would be like, oh, he's a liar, and then tell me things to
man.
hate my dad. And it was,
Yeah,
like,
that's hard.
every couple days, like,
And at that age, I mean, all you really want to do is just... You don't want to have that kind of pressure and those kind of worries.
Exactly.
You don't
just
have to
wanna-
pick sides
Yeah.
either.
Yeah.
It's just a lot for a kid at that age to deal with. Though.
Yeah. So I was
What
just,
about the rest of your siblings? How were they? How did you guys deal with it as like brothers and sisters, as the kids?
So, we were all transferring houses, like, together.
Mm-hmm.
So even though, like, we were with our dad, like, 3 days and with our mom 4 days, we were with each other
All the time.
24/7. So in a way, it brought us closer, and it kind
Siblings.
of, exactly. And so
So there was no kind of split, like where someone
Right.
like some of the siblings wanted to be with the mom and some wanted to be with.
my oldest sister was with my mom full time.
Oh, okay.
Because she didn't like my dad's strictness,
Mm-hmm.
I guess you can say. She was a rebel against authority.
Where do you fall in the sibling line? I don't know if you
She's
told
mid
us.
kid.
I am
Right in the middle?
exactly in the middle.
Awesome.
So out of the
High five.
out of the 5 girls at the time, I was the middle.
Wow.
So I said I was the middle finger growing
So
up.
you had siblings that were born. So you have like half.
Right. So at the time, my mom and my dad had 5 girls, and
Dang, that's gnarly.
we were
girls.
super close. My oldest blood sister, born in 94. The next one, 95. Me, 96. My other sister, 2000. And my other sister,
parents weren't
2002.
playing.
Yeah, my dad really wanted a boy, so he kept trying.
That's what happens, right?
Yeah. So, but then my mom remarried, and so I got a stepsister and 2 stepbrothers.
Oh,
Okay.
So
So-
that's the line.
So when the split happened and you guys stopped going to church, was it just stop going to church at all, or did you end up going to different churches?
We just stopped going to church at
Oh,
all.
okay.
Yeah. So this was because we've been going to this church for so long. Like, it was kind of like, this is
Home.
like the only church, you know.
Yeah.
So
Did you miss church when you stopped going?
Not really. I mean, we stopped going for a couple of years actually. And so, I mean, I didn't really have a recollection of like, oh, I'm not going to church. It was kind of just like, oh, I'm not doing this anymore,
Right,
you know,
yeah.
whatever. But then like when I started getting into high school, I was like, you know, things were getting kind of bad at home at my mom's house. She kind of became like into drinking like heavily.
Oh, no.
And so I just started going to church like at random by myself. And I kind of liked it because
And you came back to Park?
Yeah, came back to Park, this church. And I liked it because it was kind of my way of like escaping the drama at home.
Right.
So,
Well, it's good that you knew where to go. Because
Yeah.
you could have went anywhere. I mean, you
Exactly.
could have sought comfort in substances or boys or whatever.
oh, well,
you know?
yeah. Well, before I ran to the church, I was boy crazy. So, but
It's a different story.
I actually started coming to church because I thought one of the youth kids was cute. Don't tell Scott.
Perfect way to get into church.
Sorry, he doesn't listen.
So yeah, I started coming to church, and I became really involved in the youth group. Really involved in like student leadership, and so yeah, it just became my life like instantly.
And when you
So-
came back, you knew everybody that was here at the church already.
Yeah, so everybody was like, "Oh, wow." Like surprised to see
And
me.
you came by yourself, and like none of your siblings came
I
with
like
you.
just woke up one morning and I was like, "I'm going to go to church today." And it was a Sunday and I walked to church.
What did
It was
your
super weird.
What did your siblings think about you coming back to church? Did they want to come with you?
At first I kind of thought it was kind of weird. But then like I invited my little sister to the youth group and she loved it. And then she started coming to Sunday with me. And then we also brought my other little sister. So my two little sisters are also involved in church now. But my older siblings like are not. Some of them are atheists. Some of them are like, I believe in God, but I don't believe that he like works, you know.
They don't think he's
today.
alive.
Yeah.
Where does let's say your sibling that's an atheist, like what is that like with like your relationship?
Yeah.
with them?
So it's kind of hard because okay, like I was on the worship team like back at Park at one point.
You're back on now.
Oh, I was just on
Come
one
on, you got to keep it. She was rocking the violin this last weekend
Nice.
on the worship team.
Yeah,
It
I
was,
saw some
it
pictures.
was dope.
So like I would come home with like my sheet music and like I would have it on the counter and like I would wake up the next morning and like for example one of the songs was How Great Is Our God, and I would wake up and I would go to practice and the sheet music someone wrote in not very great, you know.
Oh, man.
And like we would just like get into like arguments at home, like why do you believe in something, like
So you guys
that's
will
not
get
real.
into theological arguments.
Right. And part of the thing that I learned in being in student leadership with the youth group, we all had subjects to study, and my subject was apologetics. So I kind of grew in that, in being more gentle in defending my faith rather than going into arguments.
Which
So-
I think is-
doing it with love.
yeah,
Not-
exactly.
not
I
trying
think
to
it's the right
hammer
way to do it, right?
Exactly.
Exactly.
And like, so my other sister, she like fights with my brother all the time about faith, but my brother like and I now like we have like civil conversations, and I think because like
He's an atheist too.
he's an atheist, yeah, but I think because like I'm a lot more like loving and more respectful with him and more gentle and loving about sharing my faith, I think he's more open to it now. I've invited him to church and he's come a few times to the Brea church, not to the Chino church yet. But and I'm like, he's opened up to me. He struggles with depression. I had no idea. And he said he actually loves going to church because he loves the community. And so, yeah, I was like, oh, wow, this is kind of opening
That's
a door.
awesome.
So-
That's awesome because I think as believers we have a big responsibility to portray Jesus in the best way possible. I mean, obviously we can't be like him totally because we fall short always.
Yeah.
But to at least be able to portray him as best as possible is always
Yeah.
great. I mean, you think about the story when Jesus was, I don't know what city, but what was Zacchaeus? When, you know, Zacchaeus was in the tree, and then he says, you know, I'm going to go to your house tonight and have dinner. But he never at any point shames Zacchaeus about the way what he was doing, which he was a head tax collector, where he was
Taking
essentially
from the people.
robbing people, you know, or doing his job unethically.
Yeah.
But Jesus never told him what you're doing is wrong, or he never did any of that. He just sat with them and ate.
He
you
just
know?
and showed how great he was and how beautiful he was, and that brought out in Zacchaeus, I want to follow you. I'll
Yes.
give everything back that I owed, or you know, that I took from people.
Yeah.
And that's what we can do, is to just point to Jesus and show how beautiful he
Exactly.
is.
We don't
you
need
don't
to
have to
judge
prove
them.
a point or judge those people.
Jesus
and
says
that.
not to judge.
Yeah.
For you will be judged.
Yeah.
You know, so
Yeah.
good on
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. So, you know, at this point, my things at home were starting to clean up and be a little less messy with my mom's like alcohol abuse and stuff, because my mom got remarried, so she just cleaned up her act, and so it was looking better. And so my dad was like, oh, well, your mom's remarried. So he had been dating this girl for 10 years named Sonia. So he's dating this girl named Sonia. They've been together like 10 years. So he's like, well, your mom's married, so maybe we should get married. So they got engaged.
I hope he didn't approach his girlfriend that way. My ex just got married, so maybe we should.
How he proposed.
maybe. It was very timely, so I think that had a lot to do with it.
Did they have a relationship? Your mom and your dad, like, did they talk a lot, or what was that like?
Right. So because they had so many kids together, they kind of had to have some form of communication.
Which I think is better than not talking at all.
Right. But like
Co-parenting.
Yeah, co-parenting. But during the divorce, it was nasty. Like whenever they would communicate, they would fight. So then they brought us into the mix and like, tell your dad to do this. Like, oh, I need money from your dad. Like, your dad's late on child support. Like, you know, stuff like that. But after the divorce, like, and they were both kind of happy with their significant others, whatever. Like, it kind of cooled down. And like at this point, like, I'm so happy, like, they get along fine, and like they're able to sit in a room together. Like, for my little sister's graduation, they sat together for the graduation. So I'm like super happy that it's kind of good. So
It's civil.
yeah, exactly.
Bring us back to, I forget. I kind of threw you off guard, but you were talking about your dad getting remarried.
Right. So my dad proposed to his long-term girlfriend, and his girlfriend had a son who was 25. His name was Andrew. And
How old were you at the time?
I was, at the time that he proposed, I was 19.
Okay.
18 or 19.
So what was your relationship with him?
With,
Your stepbrother?
well, I'm going to get into
Sorry.
that.
Jumping the gun.
So my relationship with Sonia, his mother, like, we were super close. Like, when my dad proposed to her, like, they kept it a secret from, like, my siblings. But, like, she pulled me aside in a room and she told me, and she's like, but don't tell anyone yet. You know, we want to wait for the right time. I was like, okay. So I was super excited, you know. So we were really close. Like, she would talk to me about things that she wouldn't talk to with other people. And so we were celebrating my little sister's birthday, and she kind of seemed a little off. So, like, I was talking to her, and she said, like, yeah, I'm worried about Andrew. Like, he texted me, like, hey, Mom, watch the news tomorrow because I'm going to jump off a cliff. Something like that. Yeah. And so she's like, yeah, I don't know if he's, like, alive or okay at this point. And I'm like, oh my gosh. Like, so I tried comforting her, like, in the moment, and I told her, like, well, I'll try talking to him.
So what was your so going back, what was your relationship with him like?
Right. So it was pretty much non-existent at that time. So yeah, it was pretty much non-existent.
He didn't live with you guys or anything?
He didn't live with, he lived with his dad.
Okay.
Was that far away somewhere? Or
It was in...
I'm just asking because, like, if you got that text, you know, is it something where she couldn't get to him? Or,
Right.
you know?
He lived about an hour away, I think.
Okay.
Anyways, so I was like, okay, I'll try talking to him. Like, don't worry about it. Like, I'll try connecting with him. And she knew that. I think her perception of me is like, oh, she goes to church. Like, she'll make everything okay. Like, she's a godly person or whatever. So she was like, okay. So then
That's how it works, right?
I know. We
like
have
when you're
so
the only
much
Christian in the room, like, will you pray for everybody?
Will you pray for dinner?
oh, you're a Christian. You,
Yeah, you say grace.
yeah.
Or they apologize for, like, saying something, you know, like
I know.
a cuss word or something. Oh, I'm sorry. That's cool.
Yeah. So weird. Okay. So I was like, okay, I'll talk to him. So the next day I started like texting him, and so we were kind of having this texting conversation. And you know, it's pretty much kind of small talk, and it wasn't really going anywhere, so I was kind of getting frustrated.
Well, because I would think it would be hard to, if you don't already have an established relationship,
Yeah.
to get deep to a point of to talk to him about possible, you know, where he was at.
Exactly.
You know? Yeah.
So I think in a sense I was kind of ignorant, thinking like, oh, he's gonna open up to me like right away.
I just gotta send a text, hey, how you doing?
Yeah.
And then he's gonna spill everything out.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So after a while, I got frustrated, and so I kind of gave up, pursuing him in that sense. I still kept like a friendship, but not like pushing him like to open up emotionally. I was like, oh, okay, he seems fine. Like, he seems like he's normal, you know, like not struggling with anything. So I kind of...
But the stuff that he was texting his mom never came up in your conversation with him.
Right. I didn't want to say, oh, your mom told me this.
Yeah,
like,
for sure.
I didn't want to break that trust barrier with him and his mom. So I kind of just avoided that and trying to do it kind of on my own. But, you know, it wasn't working. So I kind of got frustrated and gave up. So yeah, and a month later, or a month before the wedding was supposed to happen, I was in school, and I have my phone off during school because it's a distraction, and I'm a good student.
Sounds like a very
Just
good
kidding.
student.
No, so I had my phone off, and so class ends, so I turn on my phone, and like I had like 7 missed calls and like a bunch of text messages, and I opened up one of the text messages, and it's from my sister Erin, and it says, you know, come home, Andrew's dead. Sorry. So at that point, like, oh my gosh, like I didn't even know what to like think or feel. Like I like ran to Scott's house, and like I didn't tell Scott what happened like right away.
Scott's your boyfriend.
Right.
Yeah.
And I just started crying like hysterically, and so he was kind of just there for me, and so once I was ready, I went home, and Sonia was like laying on the street just crying, like so heartbroken. I've never seen a person so broken before in my life. It was terrible. So I went in the street with her, and I just cried with her, you know. I get home, and Sonia's crying, and you know, we're all kind of crying together. And so what had happened was, it was Super Bowl Sunday, and it was the next day, Monday night. And so he went to a Super Bowl party, and he took his friend's gun, and he went to a bridge and shot himself in the head. And so the police found him, and we didn't want to see him. And it sucks because, like, he was going to be my brother, and now, like, he's, like, I never, like, really got the chance to call him my brother. And so I asked Sonia, I asked her if he could be my brother, and she said yeah. But my siblings don't feel like he's our brother, so, like, they always give me a hard time, like, he's not our brother, like, why are you so, like emotional about it? Like, but I think they're like that because, like, they didn't know that he was struggling, and they didn't try to, like, help him.
And where you actually did try.
Right.
Do you feel like you hold some guilt for not?
Yeah. So, you know, after it happened, like, it happened 2 years ago, and, like, I still to this day, like, cry myself to sleep at night, or, like, driving to work, just cry because, like, I feel so much guilt about it. Like, I didn't, like, if only I tried, like, if I kept trying, like, maybe things would have been different. Or, you know, I carry a lot of blame and guilt because of it.
But it's not your fault in any way.
Right. The thing is, people tell me that, but, like, in my heart, I know that I could have pursued him more. And so, like, I understand, like, it's not my fault, but still, I feel like I could have tried more. So I think that's where the guilt is.
Yeah.
And you know, it's not something, like, you can, like, talk about. Like, at the time when this happened, it was 2016, the same year that park closed. So here I was kind of losing my pastor and losing my community, and really kind of not having any kind of, like, church family, like, support system, because when the church was closing, I kind of disconnected myself as a way to deal with kind of the emotional sense of like my church closing down.
Was there anybody from the church that was there for you at that time?
So Diana Rillarazzo, she was like my mentor, and I kind of opened up to her about it, and she helped me through it a little bit. But I didn't really have a pastor figure, or, I mean, I didn't allow myself to have a pastor figure because I knew that the pastor was stepping down, and I didn't want to all of a sudden give him this pastoral care kind of job to do.
Not only that, you don't want to start something that you think is,
right,
you're going to try to start a conversation that may not get anywhere because they might be going somewhere. When this all happened, you're in the church, and you're like you said, you felt like you had the responsibility to share with him the good news. Where'd you think where God, like, what did you think of God when this happened? Like, what was your thoughts of him
after it happened?
Like, were you angry at God?
Oh yeah. First I was just angry at myself, like, and just hating myself and mad at myself. But then it turned into being angry with God. Like, God, I didn't do it, so why didn't you do it? Like, why didn't you do something? Like, why didn't you meet with him? Like, why
didn't you interfere?
Right. And so I was angry with God, and so I started, like, rebelling. Like, I went back to, like seeking attention with guys, like, at school. Like, some of my classmates gave me attention, and I kind of took advantage of that. And just kind of closing off to the new church, to Southlands, and just kind of really being not opening up.
Did you lose faith?
I wouldn't say I lost faith. I was just really angry at God.
Mm-hmm.
Like, God, I feel
that doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Why?
Exactly. And I remember one Sunday, a guy at the church went up and he had like a word to share, or like a vision that God gave him. And it was a vision of 3 boats. Isaac, you might remember this, I don't know. But one of the boats, he said he saw a boat that was like flipped over, and he was like, God, what does this mean? And God told him, like, this boat needs to flip over and start again. And he saw another boat that was sailing strong. And he's like, okay, God, what does this mean? Like, and God said, this boat is sailing strong, and it's strengthening other boats to sail strong and persevere. And then he saw a boat that had been shipwrecked. And he's like, okay, God, what does this mean? And, it's shipwrecked, like, it needs to be restored. And so I remember, like, that word just, like, stuck with me throughout the day. And I remember that night I had a dream that I was that boat that had been shipwrecked, and I was kind of sitting there, like, watching the other boats sailing by, and I remember being like, God, like, I want to be that boat. Like, I want to be like that, but I feel like I can't be like that. I feel like I'm too broken to be like that. Like, I had felt like God told me to do something, and I failed him. So I felt like a failure. I felt kind of unworthy to be those boats. But I just had this desperation, like, God, I want to be that boat. I want to be those boats. And so I woke up, and I, again, just felt angry at God, like, God, why am I like this? Why didn't you step in with Andrew? Like, this has caused me to be this way, and I'm just so, like broken, God, like, why? And I remember reading my devotion for that morning. It was Jeremiah 1. I'm just going to read it real quick. So it's the call of Jeremiah. Now the word of the Lord came to me, saying, before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. And before you were born, I consecrated you. I appointed you a prophet to the nations. And that kind of stuck with me because, like, it really stood out to me because I was like, okay, like, God, you made me. And it says you appointed me. And I heard God say, but I was like, sorry.
You're good.
I'm like, I should have brought my notes. No, but I remember reading that scripture and still feeling angry, like, God, why weren't you there? Why didn't you do something? And I read this scripture, and I audibly heard God say, I did do something. I put you in his life. And then he read this scripture back to me, saying that he appointed me to be that boat. And, like, that was just, like, oh my gosh, like, that was just so powerful. And, like, instantly.
Like he wanted you to be the shipwreck.
No. I was a shipwreck looking at the boats that were sailing strong.
He's
like,
saying he made you to be the strong
yeah,
boat.
he's like, I appointed you to be that boat. And that was just powerful. Like, I instantly started, like, just apologizing, like, God, I'm so sorry that, like, I blamed you for this. Like, I'm so sorry that, like, I was angry with you. I'm so sorry that I put so much blame on myself. Like, God, I'm so sorry. And, like, it kind of really encouraged me, like, to kind of step up and kind of grow from it. Like I volunteer with the youth, and so like I really like feel called now more than ever to like love people, and especially the youth. And like now I see like kids who are like Andrew. Like I see kids who, you know, pretend to be fine on the outside but just aren't on the inside.
And kind of putting up like that costume or putting up that what would you say, like that, like just that lure of the front of everything's great,
which we all do.
Yeah,
I mean, really, when it comes down to it.
Yeah, and I especially think guys do it because I think like with girls, like,
you don't want to seem weak. For a guy, you don't want to seem two other guys.
Exactly.
I think it's in us to want to put a front of being strong and put together.
Guys don't want to show their emotions, and that's why. So I specifically like feel this call to love and just kind of be there for youth, but specifically like guys in the youth group, and that's why I do it with Scott. That way it's not weird. But so like Scott and I will intentionally pursue a kid, you know, together. Like I tell him, okay, I feel like God's putting this kid on my heart. So him and I will pursue him together and kind of do things outside of youth group. And
that's cool. That's
so
good.
And try to and is it to try to unveil what they might be what they might have under the veil per se? I mean, just because kind of it sounds like what you want to do is do what you weren't able to do with your brother.
Exactly.
You know, and really, if people are suffering on the inside. And can't talk about it because either they're ashamed, embarrassed, afraid, or whatever of what people might think of them. You're trying to help them get out so they can talk about it.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, Drew? I mean, we should be talking about this stuff.
Yeah.
This is stuff that we don't talk about in church, right?
Exactly. And like that's why I felt like I think that's why I got to where I was so like angry with God and stuff, because I didn't feel like I could talk to people about it. Like I tried, I mean, I didn't have a pastor at the time to talk to about it, or I didn't want to talk to the pastor that was leaving because I didn't want to put that burden on him. And then going into it, I mean, there's so many pastors at Southlands. I wasn't, and
like
at the time we didn't have a pastor for Chino established. So I felt like really just like, who can I talk to about this? And I was getting depressed, and I was having these thoughts too.
Because you're dealing with it on your own.
Right.
And you don't,
and I realized, okay, like I'm having these like depressed thoughts, like I'm kind of going down the same road Andrew is, and I was like, I can't do that. So I was like, I need to talk to someone. So like I tried talking to it with about it to people at school, and you know, people are like, I don't want to talk about that stuff. Like, oh, that's
too heavy.
What were you sharing with them? Just like the loneliness or the guilt, and what was it that you were feeling? Because it sounds like you're from what you're saying, you're kind of going through depression.
Yeah, I was really seeking someone to talk to, and like the moment you say like suicide, like people check out. Like that's too much. Like I can't talk about that. Whatever. And so
you were just sharing. Were you trying to share what happened with your brother?
Exactly.
And people didn't want to engage in that conversation.
I mean, and then seeking counsel from church or a pastor, was it you wanting to just, or someone to help you process through it?
Yeah, someone to kind of help me like process through it,
like understand what happened.
Exactly, and also to heal from it too, because I mean, I had never lost anyone before. So this was my first time losing someone, and it was like a suicide, you know? And so I was just like all over the place. Like I was a mess. And so I tried pursuing people at school. like with my family, I was saying that they didn't feel like he was our brother, so they were like, oh, why are you so like emotional about this? So I couldn't talk to family about it.
What about your stepmom?
So when this happened, she went down the rails. Like, she started drinking heavy, and she started doing attempts of suicide. Like, I remember she like poured her car in gasoline, and she kept saying like, I want to be with Andrew, I want to be with Andrew. And and she drove off somewhere, and like we went searching for her. We had the police searching for her. Then the police found her. So we put her, my dad's not an emotional guy, like, so he deals with this all the time, but he goes to the approach of kind of the government,
the procedure.
The procedure is what he goes to. So he put her in, a hospital, and he, we still had young kids at home, like my 2 little sisters, and he was like, I can't have this around my kids. So even though he loved her, he had, like, he couldn't have this around my
it's a very, I mean, it's a tough situation, so many different layers, and how do you navigate through that,
Yeah.
So they never got married?
They never got married, and my dad made us cut all ties that we had with her. Dang. He still talked to her and made sure she was doing okay, but he didn't allow any of us to talk to her, and it was hard for me.
So you lost a brother and like
pretty much a mom. She was living with us for 10 years.
Not only that, you said you had a pretty good relationship.
Yeah,
with her.
I was super close with her. So, anyways, I couldn't really talk to family about it. So then I was like, okay, like I need to talk to the church about it. Like, I need to talk to a pastor. So at this point, I've reached out to a pastor seeking pastoral care, and I was like, hey, like, I really need to talk to you about this. Like, can we meet up? And he was like, yeah, sure, me and my wife will meet up with you. And like, it never kind of happened, so that kind of just closed me off to talking about it even more, because like I actually I went out of my
put yourself out there.
Yeah, I put myself out there, and
Asked
it kind
for
of
help.
Exactly. So then I was like, okay.
Did you feel rejection? Or maybe not cared for? Like,
exactly.
Like
not cared for.
What you were going through wasn't enough. Like, it wasn't a big enough deal to for help. Or
and I didn't tell them what I was going through. I just said like, hey, I really need to talk about something that I'm struggling with.
What you think would be answered with, let's do it. Or,
So
you were let down right there.
Right. So I felt, okay, then I can't open up to the church about it either. So I mean,
it sounds like you're still going through it.
Yeah.
I mean, and I don't have the answers, and I don't want to pretend that I do, and I've never had something traumatic like that happen in my life to someone close to me. But I do know that within the church, within, I think, American culture, we don't do a very good job with death and mourning and how to, it's almost like it's getting over it. Like, that's what's talked about after it. Like, how do you get over it? And I don't think we should ever get over something like that. It's something that we get through.
Yeah.
And you read in the Psalms, I've heard this, I'm not an expert in this, but in the Psalms, there's Psalms of orientation, there's Psalms of disorientation, and there's Psalms of reorientation. And you hear it in the Psalms, there's the ones of just praising God, everything's great, everything's good, praise you, Lord. And then there's the Psalms that you hear David just crying out to, like, where are you, Lord? Where are you in my pain? The enemy is after me. I'm whatever, him just crying out to God, like with anger. It probably is anger, and like, where are you, God? You should be here. And then there's the Psalms of reorientation, where you've gone through that pain, you've gone through the hurt and the loss, and now you're on the other side. You're not over it, you're different from it, and because of it, but you have that, okay, God, now I trust in you, and I'm gonna live into this. And I think that's what we need more of, and that care from the church. But again, I'm not making excuses for pastors or different people, but we're not good at that.
Yeah.
And it's not a part of our culture. And have you been able to speak with someone like intimately about this?
No.
Are we the lucky
I'd like
ones?
to off show. I'd like to get you in contact with someone that I'm thinking of right now, and I don't want to put them on the spot, but let's talk after. I want to get you in contact with someone.
Okay.
But I think too, what kind of would to go with what you're saying, Drew, is that the church will tend to say like, you have Jesus, like all you need is God, and you'll feel at peace.
Yeah.
You'll
and
feel
don't get me
whole.
wrong, God has helped me through it a lot. Like,
but it's not that simple. It's not as simple as what people might say it is.
Mm-hmm.
It's saying like God will fill in the gap, right? Like that's kind of like the always saying, like whatever your heart's broken for your brother, for the loss of your brother, for the loss of your mom. You have Jesus. It's okay. He'll heal your heart. Yeah. You're good, right? But it's like, okay, I understand those words and I can comprehend those words, but my heart doesn't feel that.
Yeah.
I'm still hurt.
You're still broken.
Yeah.
And I think as a church, as fellow Christian, as your brother in Christ, is to say like, I'm hurt that you're hurt. Like my heart breaks that you're hurting. I've talked about this before, about when Jesus was in the Garden of Gethsemane, and when Jesus was crying out to God, and all he asked was for his disciples to be with him in that moment when he was suffering, when he was battling with God, like, because he didn't want it. He didn't want it. Like he knew he had to, but he didn't want to suffer. Yeah. And they couldn't even sit with him in that. They kept on falling asleep, and he was like, "Can't you just be with me?" I think as a church, as community, with anybody, and with your situation, with any situation, when people are hurting, I mean, we don't have the words. I don't, like Drew said, me too. I've never dealt with suicide in like that. I've dealt with loss, but all loss is different, and it's all, and everybody's process is different. But I can tell you right now that I'm sorry that you had to go through that, and it the fact that you're suffering from that, I'm suffering with you for sure. Like that sucks. Yeah, it sucks, and I think it's okay to be in that, and to actually
to not be okay.
Yes, and to sit together in that, I think is a process of the healing. Yeah, and to say, I don't have the answers for you. I don't know,
but I'm gonna sit here and be there for you,
Yeah. Yeah. And people have like come up to me and said like, hey, like I'm thinking about you, like if you ever wanna talk or whatever, like just know that you can talk to me. And like people in the church have said that to me, not knowing this about me. And so like that like really comforts me, but at the same time, like I think from seeking out for help and kind of getting pushed under the rug, it kind of has made me like hesitant to open up, and I really feel like in this season, like God is calling me to step out of my comfort zone and really open up about it, because I feel like he wants to use it in some way. I don't know. But so yeah, I don't know. I'm still healing. I'm still going through it. But I know that ultimately God is going to use it for his glory. And yeah.
But it doesn't make it easier in the moment.
Exactly.
In the time that you're going through it. Yeah. And that's okay. That's okay. And it's awesome to hear you say that, just to be so open and honest with us, and now on this podcast with anybody that will be listening to this, and maybe they're going through the same thing. Yeah. And that just to give some kind of hope, even though maybe it doesn't seem hopeful in the moment, that God is there and he hears you and he cries with you as you're hurting. Is there anything else you'd like to add, Haley? Thank you so much for sharing with us and opening up about it.
Yeah. Just stay tuned.
Yeah, hopefully those out there, will be praying for you as you try to navigate through it, and hopefully you get some people around you that can speak into your life, and it'll be good. Can we pray for you as we go out?
Sure.
Let's say a prayer. Father, we come before you, Lord, and we just want to lift up Haley right now. We thank you for her and her sharing her story, and just the realness of it, and we put our our faith and our hope and our trust in you, Father. And in the moments in life where nothing makes sense, it doesn't make sense at all, Lord, that we can have some kind of hope in you that at some point it will.
Amen.
And so we just pray that you'd touch Haley, you would fill her with your spirit, you would give her some kind of peace, and you bring people into her life to speak into it, to just give her the comfort that she needs. Praise you, Lord, for her being your daughter, and that you just care and love for her, and that you'll watch over her. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.